We're coming, and we ain't backing down.
We don't need a bunch of cats in here looking in the mirror.
Everybody just do your job. You understand that?
Hey, will you shut up?
I'm bitterly disappointed with the officiating today.
Guys being dudes.
And they run through our like through a tin horn, man.
Thank you, Lee. And thank you, football gods. It's season preview season. One of my favorite times of the year. This is Split Zone Duo. I'm Alex Kirshner. Pregnant pause. Wow.
Are we doing that? Are we doing that intro again?
Well, he said he wanted to do the 60 minutes, or he didn't say he wanted to do the 60 minutes thing. So I was caught off guard. I was
getting my notes out.
Probably caught as off guard as Oklahoma State's SID was yesterday as we record this, when Mike Gundy advocated for a DUI.
So Mike Gundy's off-season media circuits over the years have been less than productive.
The first media day, we got something at least mildly intriguing, mildly funny to talk.
Can you guys summarize this real fast? Because I've seen just the clips on the real tight social media clips. Is there any context I'm missing before we discuss this?
The context is Ollie Gordon got a DUI. I think he blew like 0.1. And what I honestly kind of appreciate Mike Gundy for saying is really standing on business and saying there's no fucking way he's sitting the best player on their team, arguably the best running back in the country. He's like, yeah, he's going to play, which I think is fine. What is probably a little less fine was when he started kind of going into I went through the blood alcohol content chart by weight, and Ollie probably had like 2 or 3 beers. I've done that 100 times. That's probably the less great thing that he said.
When Gundy is at his like controversial best, like when he's saying shit that's just stupefying, it's never with intent. I'm not absolving the man at all. Like, we have to be super clear here because podcasts create conjecture, but like, I've lost family members who were like killed by drunk drivers. But I'm not justifying anything he said, but I have to impart on you, both in the Mike Gundy brain and in the like rural America redneck brain, none of what he said he thought was even remotely controversial. Like, he was not saying anything that he was like, well, I'm going to get in trouble. No, you notice he didn't preface it like that at all. Like, he was just doing redneck math out loud and had no idea it would be received this way, which is, if you think about it, he always gets in trouble when he just assumes that the rest of the world thinks like Mike Gundy. Like the OAN shirt is just like, oh yeah, other like people watch OAN. Like, what's the big deal? He's never like, some people try to say outlandish like political shit or something. When Mike is unguarded, that's when this happens.
Yeah, it is stupefying that Oklahoma State in general decided to take this to the Big 12 Media Days junket. Gundy said that was an accountability thing for Gordon, who spoke too. Not to turn this into a whole philosophy lesson, but like, I don't think by any means that because of this exceptionally dangerous, selfish, stupid act that the young man's like life or career need to be over. But getting over that is like a thing you got to do with yourself and with anyone you harmed. And the both of them getting in front of microphones at Big 12 Media Days, it's one of the weirder Big 12 Media Days, college football Media Days decisions I've ever heard of. I can't believe they thought it was a good idea. I just don't understand.
I don't mind that he was there.
I don't either.
Because there's not a lot like worse that I could think of for a person of that age in that situation after making that mistake, to have to go through like the media firing line. I kind of think that is a little bit of like a hard knocks lesson sort of. Yeah. Like, I'm okay with that.
Godfrey, I also think if he didn't go, it would have been, well, I think it ended up being much more of a thing because of what was said. But I think if he didn't go, it would have been a thing. This is not just, he's the best player in the at his position in the league. Yeah. I mean, come on.
But remember, it's a controversy not because he was there or what he said. It was what his grown ass man head coach said, who was like less responsible than the kid who made the mistake. I don't want to transition into the weird thing that happens where the media gets really mad about who is and isn't at media days.
But bring the best player on your team.
But so that's happening right now in Tennessee media. They're throwing a fit because I guess Nico's not going to be. The Vols aren't bringing Nico to where's SEC media days?
Dallas.
It's not Hoover.
Dallas.
Okay, whatever. Yeah, Dallas. Sorry. And whatever your reason is. Like, I don't really sweat that too much. I know it sucks. Like, look, media days suck in general for workaday media because you're in the pile, or as we used to unpolitically correct call it, the gangbang, where you're just like doing this. And I'm doing a motion to the camera now for you audio listeners. Richard, Alex, we've all been at these things. Like, if you have an original question or something that you want to like keep for your own work, you can't do it.
No, the real value,
sucks.
the real value are and this is what they don't tell you. The real value is the head coach and the players do a session with just the local media in attendance.
Yes.
Sort of like before they go and do the whole dog and pony show. That is the real value. Some coaches will do a full off the record. So it sort of varies. I probably fall a little bit more on it's kind of ridiculous that the starting quarterback of Tennessee isn't there. I don't think it's good.
I will say that
go ahead, Alex.
From our perspective, like SCD, we've determined, as you know, if you've listened for a while, that we derive no value from these events. I do think it's totally different for beat writers, beat reporters. Like, you're covering a team.
Have to be there. Yeah.
Like, I'm not saying it's valueless, but for us, like we've talked before, like, oh, should we break off like $1,500 from the budget and send Godfrey to go do interviews at some media days? And we haven't. And I guess that's because we've made a value calculation over the years that it just doesn't do the job anymore.
It's also because we wouldn't want SCD to get in trouble for sending Godfrey somewhere and he gets chucked. I think if I went back to a media days now, actually, side note, when the commissioners speak at some of these events, you can question the commissioners after their like State of the Union address, and in some you can't. And now at my phase of my career, having zero concern for like my standing or I guess my career, I would love to like pelt commissioners with legit questions, especially this year. But you really don't. I mean, Richard knows this because he's probably been the most recently and the most frequently in the last couple of years. You don't really get that chance. Now, commissioners will do a sidebar with national reporters sometimes, where like after they do their sort of state, like Brett Yormark. So as we record this yesterday, Brett Yormark was kind of getting a little bit of shit. I don't know why, for saying like we're number 3, we're the third best, or like we're in the top 3 conference of the country, whatever.
What's he gonna say?
Right. It's like that was scripted by like a PR team and Yormark and like marketing people weeks ago. So anyways, he gives that speech and he gets off the stage, and then sometimes, usually, the national gaggle will hit him in a smaller group setting. But even then, it's like it's not great ops. It's just if you had to ask the bigger questions, I guess you could. What I would love is like I would go to SEC media days and Big Ten media days if the commissioners fielded a proper press conference.
Sankey,
like, where a microphone is passed around.
Right. So Sankey does, actually. Sankey actually does. I do not remember. The last Big Ten media days I went to was Kevin Warren's last one. Okay. So I don't remember if Kevin passed the mic around, but I did get Kevin in a sit down. I did get Kevin in a sit down. So I got Kevin that week. I think I don't remember if Kevin Warren did a proper press conference because I think I slept through it.
Nice.
Professional here.
I have done a group setting interview with Sankey before, but when I was going to media days, it was just like they would kind of, you give the opening remarks and you move on kind of deal. I would love to do a microphone to podium type situation. The only problem with the SEC again is that there are so many people.
There's so
big finger quotes here again for the audio crowd. Finger quotes. There's so many media. Look at my finger quotes. My media there. That it gums up the process of an open press conference because you'll get like, sorry, every name I just had in my head was going to be inappropriate, but like some good old boy from some like hogsillustratednet.com, Commissioner Sankey, can you talk about, and then you lose that 3-minute window of a 20-minute Q&A. So it's very hard to like actually get proper questions asked, which is, by the way, at least in the case of the Big Ten and the SEC, it's exactly what they want. The other leagues just want people there. They're trying to generate PR. They're trying to generate like headlines. The SEC and the Big Ten, because they control so much of their own media as it is, and they platformed on networks, they want the mania. They almost want to sort of do it like Comic-Con does, or like a big convention. I'm not kidding, where it's like, look at how crazy this is. Look how festive it is. It's a celebration of our league versus any actual legitimate media happening, because they control all that by just ushering their people around to the various like TV and you know, et cetera, obligations. The conference networks changed a lot of that too. Richard, were you working for the SEC network at a media days? Have you ever done that? I can't remember.
Yeah, sorta. So they would credential me. So the SEC network would credential me, and I would sort of do that because it got me better and different access. Like when I went to the SEC championship game, I would actually get a credential through the network because I could go on the field through the network.
Yeah.
And obviously I was there working for SI, but because of just the connections that I have to producers and staff or whatever, they would sort of hook me up a little bit here and there. And also, I got a little bit of behind the scenes catering at SEC Media Days because of that. So
very clutch.
You got to use the connections.
That right there, smartest thing that's the pro tip right there, guys. The food that they give the people who have business relationships with the SEC, far better than the food they give to the schlub media in the lobby.
This is funny. Richard and I were blessed to cover Godfrey's favorite bowl game, the Rose, last year. I was there for Slate, one of my freelance pubs. Richard was there for SI. And it was one of the great days of my career because I just thought it was so cool to be in the middle of that atmosphere. And we were down on the field after the game where there's like, you know, open access to go up and get some color and add to your stories or whatever. And a guy taps me on the shoulder, like a 24-year-old in a suit. And he's like, Alex Kirshner. And I looked around. It took me a second. It was this kid who I remembered as like a 7-year-old who lived up the street from me in Pittsburgh as like a cute little kid who he was at the Rose Bowl because he does like ESPN's corporate relationships. He's like, yeah, I have the Prudential box tonight. These are my guys. And I was like, bro, you picked the correct way in to college sports. Like, that's how you do it. Those are the people you want to be with if you're at big events. It's the corporate hospitality types, not the journalists.
I'm going to add one more thing before we do what we're here to do. I don't know if I should encourage this kind of behavior or not. I'm not going to acknowledge the history with the Rose Bowl. I am going to say stay tuned to Split Zone Duo, though. But the year that I think I've covered one Rose Bowl, maybe two. I don't remember. Anyways, they give out really nice stuff. Everything is top of the line in terms of like the gifts and the junk and stuff. I don't know about you guys, but like I'm very picky about workout clothes, and the Nike Dry Fit is usually the best stuff to like work out in, like when you go lift or whatever. And I have a Dry Fit Nike t-shirt basically that has the Rose Bowl right here. And I've never thought about it, even when I'm doing the whole Rose Bowl spiel on the show. So I have this thing, once a week, probably, I'm working out in this thing that has a Rose Bowl on it. And so I was at a gym here in town, and I have had a spate recently of people saying, like, recognizing the show, which is great. It's awesome. People are recognizing, like, that's what you want. And this guy looked at me like he knew me, and I had earbuds in, and he just looks at me and he goes, Rose Bowl. And it was super weird because I don't know if he was like, and he kept walking. I don't know if he meant like he's just a fan of the Rose Bowl, or if he like listens to the show and was like giving me some sort of meta level shit for wearing a Rose Bowl t-shirt. It was very strange.
Probably the former, but I hope the latter.
Let's pretend unnerving. It was the latter.
Yeah.
I also like the idea. I also like the idea of just one guy randomly in Nashville, Tennessee, who's like, I just love the Rose Bowl, and I saw it on your shirt, and I just wanted to say like how much, and then he says it to me of all people. I think that would be funny too.
Resisting the urge to make fun of you a little bit more about your feelings about the Rose Bowl, because there is something coming down the pike about that I'm excited about. Mm-hmm. We are here to start conference preview season after that little impromptu windup that we just had. We are going to start with the Atlantic Coast Conference today. We know that a lot of you listen to preview episodes sort of in a more of a batch binge format where you might knock these all out closer to the season. We are recording this one on July 10. Some things might change between now and then. Hopefully no coaches are forced to resign in disgrace, and hopefully there's no major world-turning injuries for any of the young men on these teams. But there's just the small disclaimer that in this run-up to the season, especially around the margins, some things probably will change as we get up to kickoff. We are not going to pick champions yet on this show. We will do that at the end of the offseason on our time capsule season prediction show, where we can hold ourselves accountable at the end of the year. But we will give out some superlatives here, things like the SCD preseason dude of the year, the SCD preseason minority coach of the week of the year in an interesting schematic spot from Richard, picking the likeliest fired coaches in the league, and also picking out some games that we think are low-key going to be kind of interesting, not just the big obvious ones. Very excited about it. It's conference preview time at Split Zone Duo. Godfrey, before we do that, you want to tell people about a very cool thing that you did for our splitzoneduo.com subscribers that is coming this week as we record, actually.
You guys like video games?
Nah.
You guys heard about a video game coming out?
Nah.
No.
So you're going to break the news.
I don't even have another video game I was going to jokingly slide in there because I'm kind of out of the loop on video games. But I don't know if there's been an interview longer in the making than what we're putting on the feed this week, which is our friend Ben Almiller from EA Sports, who is a long time listener going back to PAPN. And I think we've all hung out with him at some point in time in real life at this point between the three of us. He and I tailgated before a Pearl Jam concert. Ben and I have been talking about this game and coming on the show to talk about the resurrection of the NCAA game for 5 years, I feel like, longer than that. And now we're finally going to do it. I'm very, very excited. Obviously, I got to work on the game in like a super tiny way, so we get to talk about that too. But this is an interview that, it's literally years in the making. And if you care even a little bit about the game, I just want to sell this to our non-video game listeners. We're not going, like, we answer some hardcore questions on there about like dynasty mode and that and all that stuff, but like this is also for the like those of you who are sitting around right now and you're just like, maybe I'll go buy a PS5 at Best Buy this weekend just because the game's coming out. Like, if you're in that mode, listen to the show because I think it's going to get you super fired up to like play the game for the first time in forever.
Well, just like the game is good. I've played it. Godfrey's played it. The game is good.
I saw like a year and a half ago when I saw the first render. I say this on the show, so I don't want to repeat myself if you're going to listen. But a year and change ago, they showed me the first render. And when Ben would do this with consultants, he would pick their schools to show them, to like get them excited. So I saw the hill in Statesboro that I sat on as like a 9-year-old. And when it's rendered in modern graphics, I got a little like verklempt. I got a little like, oh my God. So if that doesn't excite you, like I don't know what else to sell you guys. Like, you guys are gonna be blown away by this game and like coming back to it.
It's dawning on me that Georgia Southern might not have been in the last game because they came to FBS in 2014. Not. Yeah.
No,
that's
they
cool.
were not.
So that's first time appearance. Yeah.
There's a lot of G5s that like there's been a healthy amount of change in college football since 14. And so to see that stadium and just to see just little stuff too along the way. Like, dude, if you're a fan of like just a cool stadium team, like, I don't know, LSU, Virginia Tech, Michigan, whatever, like you're going to be really excited.
I'm excited as well. I have not played the game. I've talked to Ben about it a decent bit, but I'm very excited to give this thing a shot. I'm looking forward to it. And the reason that I think it's going to be good is, trust me, it's nothing to do with my belief in electronic arts or the big company. It's because I know for a fact that the people making the game are college football people. Like, they are like us, and several of them listen to this program, and I tend to believe that they take this thing really seriously. So I'm looking forward to it. Quickly, I want to also say thank you to our partners at Homefield. You know Homefield, homefieldapparel.com. You might know the promo code is SCD20 for 20% off your first order. The thing that I will talk about specifically here is the hat collection, the dad hat collection. You don't have to be a dad to wear it. I'm not. I'm wearing one right now. Homefield has gotten into the hat game, and both I and people in my life that have sampled the Homefield dad hats, I found them to be a tremendous, especially summer wardrobe edition. When you got to protect your face a little bit. I'm currently rocking my Nebraska Huskers dad hat retro, a little bit of a cream top with a red bill. Loving it. Homefieldapparel.com is the place to go for the finest and officially licensed vintage collegiate apparel that is made with a ton of care and a ton of pride in your school. SCD20 for 20% off your first order. And of course, want to thank Nokia and Tires for their longstanding partnership with this show as well. Godfrey, you are shortly going to be filming some pretty cool video with them.
Yes.
In answering people's questions.
Stay tuned.
And
it's going to be
explaining your dad truck life. So we all, very much look forward to watching that as well. Fellas, the Atlantic Coast Conference. We are going to kind of structure this by discussion questions that I think are going to take us as we go to every team in this conference. We will start with the two biggest brands for the time being anyway. Florida State did not lose a game last year until they were playing a game that they didn't care about against a really good team after getting stuff from the playoff. Clemson, on the other hand, lost 4 games and took, I would say, one of its more depressing turns of the late Dabo Swinney era last season. Richard, I want to start with you. How big a step back is reasonable for Florida State this year? And is it a big enough step back for Clemson to win the ACC again?
The short answer to your second question is I don't think so. Now, yes, Clemson did take Florida State to overtime last year. It's not like Clemson got smoked by them. But the fact that I think Florida State's going to take a step back, I mean, go 10-2, win the league, make the playoff. Like, it's not that hard. You know what I mean? And for Florida State, the equation is not that hard. I think the Noles, like I said on our Florida preview, which we did on Substack last week, me and the Tempe Times' Matt Baker, your favorite Florida State Seminole probably isn't on the team. So keep that in mind. But they do still bring back a ton of experience. And I do trust that coaching staff to develop talent on its roster, first and foremost. But to, with their scouting operation, their pro scouting operation, hit on the portal. I mean, they hit on the portal at a rate that is actually quite stunning. And so because of that, I have no reason to think that this is going to be some giant step back. I think they just sort of continue with the momentum that they built last season to being the ACC's preeminent team. Because what have you seen out of Clemson? The Clemson that you knew and loved 2018, 19, 20, it's not there anymore. This is a 9 to ceiling 10 win football team. That's pretty good. It's not really good when you used to be going to the playoff every year. You used to be going to the national championship game every year. So I understand why everybody's upset now in Clemson, but it just sort of is what it is. That Clemson is the team that has taken the capital S, capital B step back.
Richard, do you think, you can rattle off a decent sized list of the pro scouting finds that they've had the last couple of years who have been really good. Last year, Jared Verse and Keon Coleman, probably the most prominent. Also, Jordan Travis years ago was a transfer find. Roydell Williams is here from Alabama. He's going to tote the rock. Obviously, DJ Uiagalelei is on his third school playing quarterback.
That is the one that we've got to see. You want to talk about a stress test of how good your infrastructure is, both at scouting and development when you're in the building. It's going to be DJ. It's going to be what they take what he, because he ain't changing at this point in time. It's just, he absolutely is what he is. So how do you maximize what he does well? How do you work around his deficiencies? And the point about Jordan Travis versus a Jared Verse versus a Keon Coleman, those are two different things, because Keon Coleman and Jared Verse, all right, we scouted you out of the portal. We got one, obviously, from the FCS, one from the Big Ten, and we figured out what you could do. The Jordan Travis thing is a rehabilitated football player. That is a player who wanted to change positions and quit. That Mike Norvell pulled out of the fire and said, "We can make something of you, brother." And obviously, we saw what they were. We saw what he became. So those are two different things, but they both speak to Florida State's ability to develop talent in different ways, both internally and external.
Godfrey, how much does Clemson right now to you, because this is a big debate inside and outside that fan base, how much does Clemson right now look to you like a program kind of in a death rattle, versus how much does it look to you if you just look at the pieces, at the foundation like a program that won the ACC 2 years ago and still has a pretty talented roster and could have a second act in it.
I'm having a tough time trying to measure these programs against each other because they're in such dramatically different situations by their own hand. I think the through line here is what Richard has talked about with not only just player development at FSU, but also player development of rosters of transfers and roster building of transfers, because the first complaint that you get from even the most casual Clemson football fan is that, like, hey, he doesn't want to do NIL and portal the way other people want to do it. So that's probably the through line here. I would love to have an honest conversation with Dabo about, like, can you show me on paper, you believe you can still recruit, develop, etc. at the level at which you were during national title runs in that era without, however he wants to put it, selling his soul or whatever, whatever crap he wants to put on it. It's less about a death rattle, Alex, and I think it's just like, you're probably going to be a 9-win team until you break down and accept some facet of this new culture. But that doesn't mean that it doesn't mean you can't beat Florida State. It doesn't mean that you can't be competitive. It's just highly unlikely you're going to be one of the 4 best programs in the country like you were for that, 6-7 year run.
What I think is, like, so they paid lip service to going into the portal last year, right? Last December.
Yeah.
I don't think they got anybody.
Correct.
But
so they got nobody.
And when they did, you remember he said, he was like, that we just looked in there and, nobody in there was good enough to play at Clemson, is the paraphrase of what Dabo said. You have to understand, Clemson is a program that I do not ascribe, or excuse me, Clemson is a program that I do not think culture is a buzzword. Clemson, for good, for ill, for whatever, is a program that I do believe the culture word is very important. I believe Dabo smokes what he sells, and I believe that they have a thing there. Right, wrong, or indifferent.
Yes.
But like, you look around and it goes beyond the fact that there's no Deshaun Watson, no Trevor Lawrence walking through that door. It goes beyond the fact that, well, the wide receivers, the position that you came up coaching, are now not giving you what you need. And now I look at defensive line and I think, they're the Power Rangers that they ran to a national championship, which 4 first round NFL draft picks on the defensive line. Where's that now? Because the defensive coordinator's in Norman. So it's when you talk about pulling, pieces out of the Jenga tower little by little to create the step back from national champion to what they are right now, Alex, that's where I kind of go to.
I'm doing a little bit of reporting on this trip. I'm in North Carolina right now with some friends in like 2 hours from Charlotte. I flew into Charlotte and I was playing golf by myself, as I do. And it was pretty much an empty course. So I just paired up with this other guy who was playing by himself. This was like a twilight round last weekend. And we start talking. He's a nice guy. He's a Clemson grad from 2021, I think. So his freshman year was the second Dabo National Championship. And, he's like, what do you do? Because by like the 4th hole, you're playing golf with someone, you run out of things to talk about. So you start talking about what you do. And he's like, I tell him I have a college football podcast. And so obviously now we're friends. Now we're getting talking. And I ask what he thinks of the Dabo situation. And not to like say that one Clemson fan is indicative of a political movement or do the whole like Trump supporters and diners type of journalism. But he says to me, he does the long wind up. And so I could see where it's going. He's like, I absolutely love what this guy's done for us. I love what he stands for. I love how sincere he is. And then he paused for a second and it's like a long, but come the fuck on, man, with the transfer stuff.
Yeah.
He then cited, which I didn't even realize. He then said that there were 4 schools that didn't take a transfer that cycle. It's us and the service academies, which sounds right to me. I know Clemson took 0 and the service academies do not typically have the option to take very many, if any. So
I don't think they can.
I think I'm with that. Like, I think he has a ton of goodwill there. And I also think that it's weird to criticize him for this because it's almost what we want. Like, don't get me wrong. Like, I think Dabo and I have far different politics. But Dabo believes in his guys and is loyal, and he does this with his staff and he does this with his players. I think that's part of what's going on when he says there's nobody good enough to play at Clemson. What he really means is there's nobody better than the guys I have here now that I trust. And unfortunately, I think he has a bit of a checkered track record, tongue twister, of sticking by his guys maybe a little longer than is competitively wise. He did this with like when he promoted Brandon Streeter on the offensive coordinator role.
Yes.
When he stuck with DJ for a while. Yeah, he did do it with DJ. And now Cade Klubnik is obviously in. But it's like, I want loyalty. Like I criticize the Deion thing when you treat kids like furniture, in his words, or luggage or whatever, and chuck them out. Like, I think that's a lousy thing to do. It's not a good way to treat people. And Dabo is kind of the opposite of that. And I'm just acknowledging that tension exists in my mind. Like, that I think he's not doing what he needs to do to like give them the best chance, but also he's kind of doing what we say we want, or what some of us say we want. And I'm not exactly sure how to reconcile that, to be honest.
But I think the answer is Norvell. I mean,
maybe
we don't have to live in these extremes. No one has shown me yet how rolling through 85 players a year on your roster is going to be a recipe for success. I know we haven't had enough time to make like a total empirical judgment or whatever, but we're getting there. We're getting close. It's been a couple years now, and nor do I think zero in the transfer market is a good idea. But if you take someone like Florida State, I'm not going to put Richard on the spot here and ask for like do the schedule game for 23, but like take Verse out, take Keon out, I'm trying to remember the other transfers off the top of my head. Yes. Like, they went through, and I wrote about this at the Post last year, because a lot of my job at the Post is like introducing overly educated people to what college football actually means. And like the portal was still this very unknown concept, and everyone sort of had it in the context of Deion, who was like gaming the system or screwing it up, if you know, depending on your vantage. The portal is supposed to probably look like Florida State. You are not abandoning your high school recruiting. You have to keep a strong presence in the high schools because you're in Florida, right? You are developing, hint, hint, offensive linemen, who I'm going to talk about their offensive line a little bit later in the show. You're doing all the things you're supposed to be doing, but when you have complementary pieces available, or in like Keon's case, like a really outstanding skill position player that can come in and be like game-changingly effective, that's kind of what we're supposed to be doing here, right? And also, Alex, you were talking about anecdotal reporting. I talked to 2 Albany fans this year, and they were like,
go Danes,
dude. I think they were like, it's awesome that he went and like he got that. Like, look at his career. Look at what Verse did. He helped Albany build their program up. Like, they were in the FCS championship this year. He left. He went to a top 20 brand, or whatever you want to call FSU, like a known brand, a national title winning program. And it translated into a professional career for him. Like, that's, nobody faults that. It's
great for Albany too.
Verse might be like one of the best portal success stories for all involved that we've seen. So it's like, I would say people in all walks of life, maybe abandon extremism. Don't be Dabo and don't be Deion. Maybe try and Mike Norvell your life. What I'm saying is get cornrows if you're white. That's basically what I'm saying.
What I'm interested with Clemson is going to be, I've said this on the show before, but I have this sort of idea about champions in the portal / extra eligibility COVID era, which we got another year or two to sort of hang out in that space. One thing Clemson does have is plenty of experience. Now, look, I've criticized Clemson's offensive line development for years on this show and online. The receipts are there. Everybody on that offensive line is a 4-year college football player. Junior's doing a lot of weight on these depth charts. But everybody's playing college football for 4 years or more, right? Cade Klubnik's in his 3rd year, 2nd year starting. I think there's some youth at the skill positions, but I mean, Tyler Brown, I think, is a really good player. I think Tyler Brown's probably the best weapon that they have. I like Phil Maffa enough I was admittedly probably too down on Will Shipley last year heading into the season, but I like Phil Maffa. You know, if experience is the order of the day, and Alex, I'll leave this to you to talk about what they have on defense, particularly up front. If experience is the order of the day, okay, I'm willing to hear the argument, and I'm willing to entertain the argument of experience plus culture that I know Clemson can foster equals ACC championship, not just lip service contender, really and truly continually neck and neck with Florida State. I don't believe it, but I'm willing to hear you out, Alex, if that's the case you want to make.
Yeah, I think there might be enough here for them to really have a year this year. Brent Venables isn't running things, so you can't just set your watch to it like, oh, Clemson's going to figure it out and be elite. But the guys they have on this defense are good. They just have a lot of good players from their strong prep recruiting and pretty good development on that side of the ball. Peter Woods, the defensive tackle who wears 11, is a really good player. And I got a cop to it that I feel like I didn't fully grasp how good he was last year.
And he's a young player.
I think he's going to be a sophomore this year. I believe so. He's one of those players, and I think this happens more often with linemen than anyone else, where sometimes we're taking in so much football over the course of the year that you don't fully realize the extent of how good a guy is. And then like the tape guys get their hands into him, and you see video clips going around all summer of him just bullying people. And then you go back and watch yourself and it's like, wow, yeah, this guy was a bully. Peter Woods is a first team All-American type of prospect who could be really, really, really good for them. They lost a ton in their secondary, like a ton, including a first round pick and a couple of other pros.
Yeah, Nate Wiggins is like one of the best DBs in the country.
But they have some guys here who are a mix of young and experienced, who have played a little bit and played pretty well. Avion Terrell, AJ's brother, is one of them, following up the Terrell family legacy in the Clemson secondary.
Go Falcons.
They always have that one linebacker, it feels like. Barrett Carter is still here. Not saying he's going to Isaiah Simmons it, but he's still there. They've got some good players. I kind of hold two thoughts at once, that I think Dabo's tenure is in decline, and that I wouldn't be very, very surprised at all if Clemson at least snuck into the playoff this year. It really wouldn't surprise me, but obviously a lot depends on Cade and Garrett Riley.
I think the difference is I don't think it's decline. I think it's found its level. I don't think they fall much. I don't think Clemson's going 6-6, man. Like they're not that like.
So the way to say it is, are they a 14 playoff team? No. They're a 12-team playoff team.
Sure.
With the kind of defense that could win, that could muck things up a little. I mean, we saw them take FSU to overtime last year, despite being a significantly lesser team than Florida State last year. I'm down on Clemson long term, but I'm a little bit intrigued. I have to admit it.
If he listens to Matt Luke, if outside voices in that room at OC, at O-line, and Luke is like, I believe assistant head coach,
whatever,
like basically the number 2, right?
Head coach, whatever you want to call it.
Like, there's a way you can pull the nose up on this thing and not crash and become a cautionary tale about the portal and about modernizing your program. There's a way, but only one man can make that decision. Because Alex, I think you're right. I don't think that you can just simply point your finger at what will be the 24 season, barring massive injury or something like that, and say, we told you so, Dabo. I think it's going to be way, way more subtle, and that's going to kill the fan base over time. It could just be that, like, as Richard says, leveling off, where it's like a 1.5 game variance over the next 5 years, and then you look up and you're like, oh man, we sure have been to, like, the Champ Sports Bowl more than we've been a playoff contender, and the glory days are behind us. That's probably what would happen. Or he can listen to other voices in the room and adjust his, what do we want to call it? Dogma, bullshit. I mean, like, you don't, dude, preachers change their sermons all the time. Like, Dabo, you have the ability to adjust on the fly here. And because he's finally brought some outside voices in, I think that's the best chance that they've had in a while of him, potentially changing some of his bullshit up.
These are the two year in, year out contenders in this league lately, or appearing to be going forward. Want to talk about a few here who seem like they could be ACC championship game type teams this year if things bounce right for them, if they develop players well. It's been pretty common, remember the last couple of seasons, last handful really, for the ACC to have one interloper or two in serious contention, playing in Charlotte, being in the mix. I think people thought that would end when the Coastal died off a few years ago, but it didn't. Pitt beat Wake Forest in an ACC championship game. Clemson beat North Carolina, who's been up a few times in these games. Last year, Louisville was in this against Florida State with their very tough quarterback situation at FSU. That's 3 or 4 kind of middle-class Power 4 programs just being in this game the last few years. My question is, if we're looking at this group of like Miami, Virginia Tech, NC State, Louisville, which was there last year, do you see a middle class or upper middle class ACC program that looks most poised to you to give this thing a look and stay, maybe play in the conference championship game?
I mean, I know you guys are infatuated with Virginia Tech, but like,
no, I don't think. Nope.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
Well,
I love Virginia Tech, obviously, but I think we got them too high.
All right, we'll get to Virginia Tech in a second. Then I didn't expect you to say that.
Yeah.
I mean, I kind of think it's Miami, right? Which I know is sort of a cop-out answer, but like,
yeah,
Miami's
no, it's not. How many ACC championship games Miami played in?
Just like, for a second, like, can we acknowledge that this format is made to make us look like dumbasses? Not Alex's format overall. It's just with this conference.
Yeah, because you never.
This is the conference that turns you into an idiot when you get like in that 2 to 7 range because it's the cul-de-sac.
And remember,
this is what we're talking about.
No more divisions this year, so it would be a real humdinger there.
I think that might make it worse.
Yes, you can pretty easily convince me Miami's going to have the best offense in the league. To be honest with you, Cam Ward as an addition in and of itself raises the level of what you can do at quarterback. Xavier Restrepo's. He's not Donovan Green, but he's probably the best other receiver in the league, or at least one of them.
Their receivers are good in general.
Yeah,
Their receivers
are good.
Damian Martinez toting the rock from Oregon State.
Yeah, I forgot about Damian Martinez. I was about to say Mark Fletcher sort of had a carry share last year, so can give you enough as a backup running back or a second running back. But yes, Damian Martinez toting the mail. They bring back everything on the offensive line besides the center, who's a good player transferred from UCF who left. But everything else on the offense looks like it's about ready to go for Miami. The defense, we'll see. I mean, they have portaled. It's Ruben Bain.
Beast.
And sure, Ruben Bain, awesome. But like the rest of the defensive line, complete portal, including the Simeon Barrow thing, which got really fucking weird in May with the Izzy leaving. I don't even know what.
That's the defensive tackle.
Yes, from Michigan State, who transferred in from Michigan State. So they've portaled. It's not just the starters on the defensive line; it's the starters and then some reserves as well. So the defense, I think, is more of a changing face to where I throw my hands up and I say I don't know. But on offense, I'm pretty sure about Miami on offense.
Also, it's not. I mean, we do, and we will continue. I'm not going to be bullied out of doing it. Joke quite a lot about Mario Cristobal's management at the end of games. Ugh. But it's not like it's written in the stars that every year forever they're going to do something cataclysmically stupid in the last 30 seconds of a game and lose a coach game.
Just don't do it. It is. Just don't do it, though.
My point is, at some point, if you recruit like this, you should see dividends. You should. Doesn't mean you will.
I am interested in this with Miami on defense. Lance Guidry, total blitz merchant. Absolute insane person.
It's great.
They boy, do they love a DB blitz. Do they have to do that? Are they doing it? Are they doing it because they have to? Or are they doing it because that's kind of the id of the defense? And I think if you truth serum any defensive coordinator, I think any defensive coordinator would rather just get pressure with 4 and play coverage and figure it out.
I don't know if Guidry would, dude. I love, like, I've known him for a long time in the industry or whatever, so I guess I am like biased to his character, but with the amount of on paper talent and his proclivities, like, they are definitely the preeminent, like, in the entire nation, like, hey, y'all watch this shit defense. Like, we're like, before your buddy does something really stupid, it usually involves like the roof of your house in college or like a firework or something. Like by far, they are. To your point, Richard, should they have to do all this exotic shit with the base talent they have? No. Am I going to tell them not to? No. Right. Like this, you're going to see some weird shit. But to Alex, I just want to reiterate in case someone might have forgotten. This is not an issue of a confluence of ideas and decision making in a probability matrix in a late game situation. In other words, what Alex is referencing is not that you could maybe put it on Mario that they should have changed a play call in like a 3rd and short situation to extend a drive. I want to be really clear here, folks. This team last year would have had an entire fucking extra conference win if they had called QB fucking Neal.
Incredible.
Okay? All you had to do to have one more win in conference play was not call any plays.
It was a mathematical certainty because of how time works that they would have won the game. Your coach lost you a game in as clear a example as you will ever see on a football field.
Yes, but it's a rehash. It's a rehash.
Of course. That don't mean I'm not going to rehash it. That don't mean I'm not going to rehash it.
I know. I'm just saying I don't think that that's going to happen again. I don't know. We'll see. I am kind of with you on Miami
Alex,
here.
If it does, you have to fire him.
I would agree.
I think I said
he's very well protected. I think you have to fire.
I think I said at the time it was a fireable offense when it happened last year. To be honest with you,
I mean,
it randomly came up in my YouTube algorithm a month ago when I was looking for something else football related, and I was just like, I'm going to watch this again. And let me tell you what, it still plays. It's still the dumbest goddamn thing you've ever seen.
If he doesn't do anything like that, I'm pretty bullish on Miami. I probably agree with Richard, but we structure these questions to talk about different teams. We've already done Virginia Tech on SCD a few times recently, so I'll keep them pretty quick because I think listeners are already familiar. The case is good. I think the back half of last year, they were really good. Kyron Drones is a really good returning quarterback. True dual threat. They use him as a number in the way they couldn't with Grant Wells. Virginia Tech has high standards for dual threat quarterbacks, but he's a pretty good one, and I think he's going to be a good player for them this year. And the schedule falls in their favor in the ACC this year. So I think Virginia Tech being around till pretty late in the year is very plausible. The one that I really don't know what to do with is NC State.
Well, copy paste.
Well, that's the thing, right?
Well, hang on. I think, but it isn't. Look, I'm the VTech guy on the show. I don't know if they belong in this group. I definitely think they belong directly below it, and I just think that in terms of depth, it's just depth.
Maybe
they had such a paucity of talent. Like it was crazy bad when he took over from Fuente that I just think they're one more cycle to be in this conversation because I'm going to talk about Louisville in a second and then NC State. I think again, barring catastrophic injuries, these are deeper teams that theoretically
NC State is
that theoretically would have that extra November, the ability to get the extra November win. Like I'm not shitting on Tech. I think they're headed in the right direction. I just think they're still a skosh under this.
I think that could be true. I think if you're talking about programs with floors or the floors of these teams, I think NC State is a little bit higher than Virginia Tech just because you trust that Doran will put something together. They are a bit of a point of confusion for me this year, though. I think I could pretty persuasively argue to you that they are a potential number 2 or number 3 team in the league or on the fringes of bowl contention. The bear case here is that like Grayson McCall is the quarterback now from Coastal Carolina. It's been a lot of years and a lot of injuries since he was last really, really effective. And that was with Jamie Chadwell sort of manning the controller with him as well. And you could tell me that might not go nearly as well as people hope or the name brand suggests that it would. And I would find that very plausible. And also the defense was the strength last year and they lost a ton, including Peyton Wilson, who's the All-American middle linebacker, classic captain of the defense in the middle guy for them, and a couple of other very important front players. NC State always kind of randomly develops like NFL defensive linemen with the best of them, which is I've never fully understood, but them and Utah are the two that do it from outside the Blue Bloods. So that's concerning. But you could also tell me that Doran is always going to keep a team competitive because he pretty much always does. Casey Concepcion, excellent receiver who produced big for them as a freshman. They added Noah Rogers, the running back Jordan Waters from Duke, who was a good player with Riley Leonard there last year under Mike Elko. He is here now at NC State. They have a center in from Notre Dame, which is a serious offensive line development program. They have 3 starters back on the line, so it's not like a portaling the whole line thing. It's just kind of importing a veteran piece from a good program. The schedule avoids Florida State. It avoids Miami. It avoids Tech. It avoids SMU, who a lot of people are bullish on. I'll leave it to you, the listener, to decide where that nets out for NC State. I really could see. You're not going to see a Doran team win 10 games usually, but you're not going to see them win 5 either. And I think anywhere from 6 to 9, maybe 10 if things go great, is very possible for them.
Let's talk about Louisville for a second. And again, I really am just going to couch and caveat and asterisk every conversation we have in this range with this is the ACC. And while the ACC has a new and different identity, it will always feed and fester and thrive in chaos, a sort of a chaos inside of mediocrity. And this is the range of teams here where I'm just convinced anyone we're bullish on right now is probably going to drop 3 extra games, and anyone else who has no business is probably going to gain 2, and everyone's going to end up 7 and 5. So just please take everything that I think I'm about to say that I think with a massive grain of salt. I have a question.
Coward.
It's just this league, dude. It's history. Like, how many times has NC State, North Carolina just made you look like a dumbass in prognostication? Like, we'll talk about the heels in a second. By the way, my only request for NC State this year is to continue to make Mac Brown mad like someone teaching cotillion gets mad. Because, nothing pisses off Mac Brown more than NC State having success. And I don't have a dog in this hunt, but I love the pearl clutching. Okay, Louisville. Genuine question here. And there's no real way to answer this. But was this the quietest double-digit win team in the country last year?
No, because we all sat here and said they suck. The schedule sucks.
Okay, but not on this show. I just mean when you step outside of our bubble and you go and look around.
It was a good year for Jeff Brom.
Yeah,
I mean, it was a nice debut.
They won 10 games.
It was a very nice debut, and all of the qualifiers about the rain and the injuries are what they are. And yes, I agree,
right.
But they didn't come that far from winning the ACC championship game. Pretty good year.
Okay,
no, I thought they had a really good year.
Hold on about that, all right? You will note a certain thing happened with their opponent in the ACC championship game.
I said that. I agree with you.
Okay, so maybe they are, or maybe they aren't like the quietest. Maybe they're the most suspect double digit. I don't even want to get into all that. I do think the games that they lost and when they ended the year on a 3-game losing streak. That definitely contributes to the fact that people weren't like going into February talking about what a year that Louisville had. But they are on paper good again for sure. The thing that I would touch on real fast before we get into the obvious like Jeff Brom of it all is like this is a good defense. This was like in standard stats, not advanced metrics, like a top 25 defense, especially against the run. They have a really, really good pass rusher. I'm going to butcher his last name, Ashton Gallote. Is it Gallote or Guillote? Louisiana has killed my brain. I don't know.
Can't remember, actually. Good
Don't want to get it wrong on live radio. So,
right.
Yeah, but understood.
Well, either way.
Okay.
Either way, he's their best defensive player. And then they have a really good cornerback, Quincy Riley. The more I was reading about them, the more I realized like they were like suspiciously above average on defense in a lot of these games, which is like everyone just associated. Jeff Brom's going to come in there and they're going to throw it around a lot. Just to make you guys mad, let's talk about seventh year quarterback.
Is it
7?
Is it 4th school or 3rd?
It's what?
Third.
Oregon,
Texas Tech here for Tyler Shuck.
Okay.
Yeah.
It's a lot of years of Tyler Shuck.
Okay, aside from the ongoing SED debate about why I don't give a shit and why this bothers the hell out of you guys, do you know in his 7 years the most amount of games he started in a season?
Probably like 6.
Yeah,
7.
it's literally
7.
Can't be more than 6. 7.
It's 7.
Look, man, quarterback. There can only be one quarterback per team, and this is someone who's not developing playing quarterback for a 7th year guy on his 3rd school. I don't know, man.
It's funny you mentioned that, Alex, because for the first time, I am going to kind of lean into your vantage point on that. He is probably going to be the starter on this team. at least the way that they like the spring was sort of shaped, right? They are well aware. In fact, there were quotes in the local media of like, Brom was like, yeah, he likes to run. We're not letting him. He's not going to fucking run. He's not crossing the line of scrimmage unless something goes horribly wrong, because they are coming off of a double-digit win season, trying to build momentum back for a program that had lost it for years under Satterfield. Native son, da-da-da-da-da. And they're hitching their wagon to this seventh-year journeyman who is wildly injury-prone, mainly because he has that sort of like, he's got big Jake Hayner energy of just like, what was my guy at Syracuse and Mississippi State that I love so much? Garrett Schrader. Like, he's got a lot of that, like, fuck it, it's just my body mentality. I don't know if I'm building a program around that guy in a really kind of crucial second year arc here, but they are.
It's not just him. They're rotten. Isn't it like 9 transfers on offense that are going to start this year?
Yes, it is. They've lost a lot turning it over. I have significantly more confidence in Brom to scrabble together something on offense structurally. Decent at running back. They're going to run the ball a lot. This is going to be a good year, but again, it's like ACC suspicious. This is easily an 8-win team that the schedule farts out 10, or it's an 8-win team and the schedule does weird shit and they're 7 or 6. So I feel good about them long term. It's a muddy picture in the short.
Do I hear maybe if I were to kind of hold up the auction sign thing here, or maybe I guess I'm the auctioneer. Do I hear any interest in maybe a little Georgia Tech noise being made?
No, you do not.
No.
None?
No.
None.
You know, you're kind of playing into my hands by answering that way. I don't think they're going to contend for the league or anything, but I think the quietest, really solid year 1 coaching job or year 1.5 coaching job last year might have been Brent Key. It felt like he got a lot of press for how much better they played right after they fired Jeff Collins in the middle of 2022, but then didn't get a lot of the press for Georgia Tech being reasonably competent last year. I mean, they went 7-6. They portaled in a quarterback, Haynes King, who didn't work out at his last place at A&M and came here and played pretty well. Jamal Haynes, the Haynes brothers in the backfield, Haynes King and Jamal Haynes, was one of the better player development stories of the year because he's a wide receiver, but they moved to running back and he played really well at that position. They stopped being a shambolic mess on special teams, which you will definitely remember was one of the hallmarks under Jeff Collins. Remember all those kicks that they had blocked, the punts they had blocked, the bad snapping. It's a heavily portal defense. They have a lot back on offense. They have a new defensive coordinator as well, Tyler Santucci, who comes with some bona fides because he's a Mike Elko guy who comes over from the Duke staff that disbanded. If you guys won't admit it, if you're not brave enough to admit that the Bees are a little bit intriguing this year for the first time in several years, then I am willing to stand with our Atlanta neighbors and say that I am intrigued by them. Just intrigued.
They're better. It's a better staff and a better roster overall in terms of like they cleaned up a lot of the crazier egregious Collins shit that you talked about. But look, this guy's a bridge coach. I think he'd admit it at this point. How do you get out of being a bridge coach? You have to have, I think, back-to-back exceptional years. And I don't see that happening just by virtue of what hinders them at Tech. They're never going to be as... Collins is like a risk-reward guy in a really dramatic way. And he also had a lot of, I think, just hubris and investment in the wrong areas as a head coach. And that showed up as a team that looked dumb on the field at times. But that's not going to happen anymore under a guy like Brent. Like, he's an offensive line coach. He's FFC for sure. But I don't think that they're going to be able to get to the top half of the league consistently because there's still Georgia Tech problems there.
Sure. Agreed. I wouldn't dispute any of that. I just think that for the first time in a while, I think you look at Georgia Tech this year and you think, that could be a pretty good football team. And I think a lot of their fans will take that given where they've been.
I think that they could win 6 or 7 games and go to a bowl.
They just did. Yeah, I think even let's shoot higher. Let's see if you could win 7 or 8. There are 3 ACC coaches right now whose tenures I think could very easily be described as going stale or gone stale. I'm not saying that they have not overall done pretty good jobs or very good jobs where they are, because I think some of them have. But Pitt has gone from 11 to 9 to 3 wins the past 3 years, and it's been a pretty painful decline as Pat Narduzzi has somewhat willfully, I would argue, let his offense fall into disrepair after an ACC championship in 2021 and committed regular unforced PR errors. This is Narduzzi's 10th year at Pitt.
That's incredible.
Yeah. Wake was the other team.
Is it?
No, not even in like a, I don't think he should have the job. I mean, just the base level, like, fact of the matter that he's been there for 10 years.
Time flies. And get this. Wake was the other team in the ACC title game that Pitt won a couple years ago. They have gone from 11 wins to 8 to 4. They lost Sam Hartman to Notre Dame last year in one of the real demoralizing, the portal might kill the middle class type transfers of this era. This is Dave Clawson's 11th year in Winston-Salem. And North Carolina got destroyed by Clemson in the title game a couple years ago. It was a vanity appearance for them. Mac Brown has won between 6 and 9 games every year and just failed to do anything of note in 2 years with the number 3 pick in the draft playing quarterback for him in Drake May. This is Mac's 6th year in Chapel Hill.
6?
Time flies. And none of them are really trending in a good direction. I think for now, these are 3 previously opened cans of Pringles. Can you make the case for any of these guys arresting the slide this year and creating a more optimistic, forward-looking momentum for their program?
Yeah, just like with Wake, it's like you can't be worse on offense. I mean, you have to have a pulse in the passing game, which they did not last year. Now, some of that, a lot of that, is because their best player got hurt in camp. Donovan Green got hurt on like the first day of training camp last year, and the injury never played. So he comes back this year. Remember, when it was popping in 21, it was A.T. Perry on one side and Donovan on the other side. And obviously with Hartman, we're able to create magic with that offense that we all know how I feel about it. So I just, like, they only won one conference game last year. I think it was 1-7 last year in a conference play. They just cannot be that bad passing the ball. Like, it just, I refuse to believe that. I believe that there is some Dave Clawson-ness that will be able to get this thing up to snuff. The fact that I think one conference win for Wake Forest is not good enough is a credit to Dave Clawson. It's a credit to the job he has done. It's a credit to how consistent they have been. While I find it nuts that Mac has been there 6 years and Narduzzi's been there a decade, it's funny that when you say Dave Clawson's been there 11 years, I'm like, yeah, man, he's in the walls. Like, he's been there for 20 years as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, he's had a hell of a run there. And I think it's easy to forget, not that people do, but to forget what it can be at Wake over an extended period of time if you don't have that level of competency. I won't belabor the point about the last few years of Pitt's offense with Pat Narduzzi. I think you can, among all the things that Pitt fans have disagreed with on this, I think everyone agrees that he whiffed bad on both a portal quarterback, Phil Dracovic, and an offensive coordinator, Frank Signetti. The two of them had previously been together at Boston College and were both Yinzers by upbringing. And they just missed on sort of the two most important personnel things you can do with your offense. So there is some reason for hope this year. I think, the quarterback situation strikes me at Pitt like it might take a few weeks to really find its level. But Cade Bell is the new offensive coordinator. He's in from Western Carolina, where he had one of the better FCS offenses, best in the SoCon, I believe. And the word out of Pitt from people who I don't think like bullshit you, like from trustworthy local media, the words that Pat has chosen and the way that he has talked about his offense is that they're going to be a little bit more fun, let's say, this year. Like, they will embrace some spread principles that they were not really embracing the last few years. I'm excited to see that. I think it's necessary given how stale things had gotten for them on offense. I don't know if it'll be enough. And I think there's really concerning indicators about Pitt right now. Charlie Partridge, the defensive line coach, who I think was like the most important assistant on that entire staff, took an NFL job with the Colts. The recruiting has not leveled up in a way that would say, oh, like Pitt's recruiting above its weight. It's not. They lost one of their best players, Deion Hayes, defensive lineman, to Colorado over the spring. And he said on his way out that he thought that Colorado gave him a better chance to win than Pitt, which was a little bit concerning to hear, and also just kind of bad recruiting ammo for Pitt. So I'm pretty pessimistic about Pitt right now, but at least I see like a possible glimmer of hope in the fact that they are changing things up on offense, and I think they will look materially different on that side.
Just let Cade cook.
Yeah.
Let Cade cook.
Yeah, got to.
Please, God, don't micromanage your OC.
Oh, by the way, transfer quarterbacks, and going back to Wake, Hank Bachmeier, 7th year third school, or 6th year third school. I can't even keep track anymore. But
what was it? He had this Louisiana Tech.
Wait, what was this? Oh, who's it? No, hey, that one.
That ain't on him. Yeah, that ain't on him.
Louisiana Tech is a super messy situation.
I will give you. Yes, I will give you.
Yeah, yeah.
Bad situation at Louisiana Tech. We'll come back to it. Conference USA. Godfrey, you on North Carolina, you've had, I think like you were pretty happy for them when Phil Longo left to go to Wisconsin because you felt like UNC's defense wasn't getting a breather and that was hurting them. I'm not really sure that was UNC's defense's problem. I think it was more that the defense was coordinated by Gene Chizik. He's gone now. Jeff Collins is in.
I definitely say that we'll talk about Longo more when we get to Wisconsin in the Big Ten because it's a fascinating experiment to run that system at the high levels of college football. I'll leave it at that. Two things can be true, though, that North Carolina's offense was hurting its defense and North Carolina's defense sucked. So, hey, it's Jeff Collins time again. We're going to talk about him. This is the most frustrating team to prognosticate. The Mac Brown era North Carolina Tar Heels. This is a righteous pain in the ass. They squandered their Drake May swan song, and yet this is still a pretty good roster. And probably, I would say, with a lot of these guys returning, better for the implosion that they suffered last year. I am curious how, again, Richard, to talk about blitz-heavy, exotic defensive coordinators. Are we going to? It's interesting to me that like Collins is more of a. I don't know if Collins is a solution to create a steady hand, or if it's more like, hey, we've got a ton of defensive talent, we're misusing it. If that's the case, I think Collins is really good because I saw him do this at Mississippi State specifically. And also, for that matter, Florida too. Like he came in, I think he maximized defensive pieces at Florida really well. But I'm so suspicious of the way this program runs because they are just so consistent at being inconsistent and failing to live up to the years where they're hyped. It's kind of like NC State in a way that I don't really know what to think here at all. Also, we're just going to do this on every team now. Max Johnson, Texas A&M.
Yes, we are. Because this is the future liberals want, all right? You got it. Congratulations.
How many fucking Texas A&M quarterbacks can we fit into an ACC conversation? Haynes King, Max Johnson. Yeah, Max Johnson's probably the fucking quarterback. If you told me right now they're going to have a better or more consistent, like at least season in league play than they did with Drake May and Max Johnson's the quarterback because the other shit got corrected, sure, why not? Makes sense, I guess. North Carolina is just hard to understand. I think, like, Richard, you know what I'm talking about here. I am so tired of hearing people in the industry on off-the-record phone calls be like, North Carolina could be a giant.
They are. I say this about North Texas when we talk about G5 team. Or not North Texas.
Colorado
State. Yes,
Colorado
State.
do.
Sorry.
I knew where you're going.
I say this about Colorado State every single time. Every time Colorado State comes open, everybody's like, "Oh, they got potential. They got money. Yada yada." I don't give a fuck. Win something. North Carolina's the same way, man. It was Georgia, and then they won something. So North Carolina, figure it out because it's been going on 30 years on this with North Carolina.
It really has because I remember going to the covering Butch Davis, North Carolina, and it's like having out of 22 starters, like 7 or 8, 9, 10 NFL players some years. This program doesn't lack for anything at all. It's not a basketball school. I know it is a basketball school, but it's also not. This football program's Q rating is dominant in an increasingly important recruiting area in the United States. They have money. They have Jordan. They have legacy appeal. They are the flagship recognized brand of a very important state. And yet.
Let's also talk here about UVA, because for obvious reasons, they don't exactly fit into what you would call stale, like the way that we talked about those other coaches. I'm wondering what we make of Tony Elliott right now. It was really awkward and probably not even entirely fair to evaluate them on football alone last year. Maybe it's still not. Devin Chandler, Lavelle Davis Jr., Sean Perry were murdered in just November of 2022. They canceled the very end of that season. His job became very much in the non dogma way. It became actually about more than football at that point. And then they had a really tough year last year too. I mean, they not only did they keep losing, they've won 6 games in 2 years, but they had one of the scariest on-field injuries in years. Paris Jones, running back, needed spine surgery after a play at Louisville. The players have been through quite a bit. They have UVA problems, obviously. Like UVA is just a very prestigious academic school that, for numerous reasons, for many decades, has not been able to entirely convert that into football success.
Are up Thomas Jefferson's ass? Is that what you're looking for?
Well, that is one. Yeah. More than I was also going to say academics, but also, yeah. A lot of returning starters this year, but returning starters from pretty bad teams. Schedule is hard. Both Notre Dame and Clemson are on the road. They have Maryland and Coastal and non-con. They could lose both of those. Is this a prove it year?
Yeah, could lose to Maryland, huh? I bet you like that.
Yeah. Well, Maryland did beat UVA pretty good last year, if I recall, after UVA getting out to an early lead. I think, for all my criticism of my alma mater, I think they're better than UVA at football right now.
Boy, that is...
Feel the Terrapin hype.
Yeah. Throw the parade for that one.
Yeah. Calm down, Alex. Jeez.
I don't know, man. It's just not a good football team. What do you like? Find me the guy on this roster. Guys plural. Everybody's got one. Like, find me the guys plural on this roster where you're like, all right. Like, you can go in a battle and win with these guys. I
don't know. I do like their quarterback because he's fun, Anthony Colandrea. Him and the guy Castellanos from Boston College remind me of each other. Sort of the wild man quarterback, bit of a chaos merchant.
Yeah,
they have,
wants every quarterback to be good. Yeah, you don't want every quarterback to be good. You want some quarterbacks to be fun.
They have a real battle here too. I think Tony Muskett, the Monmouth transfer, who was pretty good for them last year, might play quarterback. I like it. I like a sincere seeming quarterback battle. Seems like they might have one.
Alex, apparently that Monmouth kid is like very good. It came up in the coach gossip stuff in the off season. Like, and I only bring that up because they were like, "Hey, there's a kid from Monmouth that was good," and I was like, "All right, well, I haven't heard that one, so write that down."
They have a good player at receiver they got from Notre Dame's Chris Tyree, and like, other than that, I don't know, man.
Rooting for him, sincerely. Player's been through a lot in that program in the last few years. Rooting for him. I think I'd be lying to state a lot of optimism, but hopefully that's wrong. I hope Tony Elliott gets it going there in some fashion. There are some new coaches in this league this year. I ask you, between Syracuse, Duke, and Boston College, can you make the case for there being new coach optimism that sustains after they actually play games this season? Because obviously there's plenty when you take the job.
No.
Well, do your best. Play devil's advocate.
I can do mine real fast. If everyone keeps a sane mind about Duke, then let's have this conversation in a year. Okay? And I don't know. Is basketball going to be good at Duke this year?
Yes.
They were in like the Elite Eight, right?
It's going to be no. You don't understand. There are Duke years this will be one of the Duke years. Like, awesome. Duke has an incredible white player on their team. Yes. It's going to be one of those years. Yep. Be ready.
Like, the kid is probably going to be the number 1 NBA draft pick next year.
Be ready.
Okay.
Be ready.
Right. White player Duke year. Perfect. Okay. That's going to help Manny Diaz, because here's the situation. You can't pull this trick twice at Duke. It's just like what Elko did was it wasn't luck. It was a little fortuitous with some timing in the league and a couple other things. They have lost personnel wise a lot of what made that sort of be magical those 2 seasons. Obviously Riley's gone. I really like Manny. I really like Manny's idea of like, he was doing a lot of smart things at Miami before that situation ended the way it did.
Euphemism
Politically,
of the
you could
century.
say.
Yeah.
So I'm fine on Manny long term. I think that was a really good hire for both parties. But let's be really realistic about year one. That's all I was trying to say. So, Alex, but like your gimmick here is, are you going to have good vibes in like March of 25 about Duke football?
Yeah, sort of. I mean, we're asking like,
if you're rational,
what can you actually show on the field once you have to do that and not just win press conferences?
You ain't beating
okay,
Clemson
well then probably
again.
not. Yeah. I mean, here's the other thing too. It's not like this is his first rodeo in the conference. Like they're gonna be well equipped and like they understand a lot of the schemes that they're seeing offensively and defensively because of their experience at Miami. So fair to Midland, I still think is an appropriate way to embrace Duke in a pretty substantial roster turnover.
Richard, you're not buying the Fran Brown recruiting and vibes bounce at Syracuse.
Vibes are good, Richard.
Not
vibes
year
are
one.
good.
Yeah, the vibes are great. I'm not saying they're not. I'm just let's pump the brakes a little bit on like 7 wins here. Like okay, let's give it a second. You added a quarterback. It's just about as nice a thing as I can say about Kyle McCord being there.
Damn.
Sure, man. I like it. Sure. Your best player is banged up. Orlando Gatson, the flex tight end, is banged up right now. That is a problem for you on offense. Now, the vibes are high. We're going to talk about Minority Coach of the Week in an interesting schematic spot. Minority Coach of the Year of the Week in an interesting schematic spot. Of course, Minority Coach of the Week is not an achievement award. It's simply taking Minority Coach in an interesting schematic spot and saying, that's interesting. Obviously, it's Deshaun Foster. Deshaun Foster. Jesus Christ.
I was confused when I saw that in the notes.
Fran Brown. They all look alike.
Wow.
It's
Jeez,
Fran
he said it.
I'm gonna get out of the frame as you say that because I know who's gonna catch it.
Brown.
Yeah,
and the
Run,
staff it's Fran Brown and the staff that he has put together with Elijah Robinson as defensive coordinator, executive head coach, and Jeff Dixon as offensive coordinator. They have black guys at the triumvirate head coach and both coordinators. I think what they are doing is interesting. I think what they are doing, and I mean Syracuse in general, you go and get this guy who does not have head coaching experience at major college level, was a position coach. Why are you bringing him in? What have you? You're bringing in because you believe very strongly. Syracuse took a swing. Everything, all I ask for all of these programs, particularly the ones who are not a top 20-25, take a swing, man. If you're going to go 4-8 every year, why go 4-8 doing the same shit? And to Syracuse's credit, they went out and they took a swing on a guy and they went black. Congratulations, Syracuse. Honestly, legitimately, congratulations. It's a huge deal. I do not know that they're going to go 8-4 this year, but yes, the vibes are high.
Boston College took a very different approach to hiring a coach. They went a retread might not be entirely fair. Yeah, well, yeah, Bill O'Brien is certainly not black. I think that the vibes here are also kind of good because that fan base, to its credit, reasonably so, sort of rallied around the flag a bit when Jeff Hafley left them in the offseason. And Jeff Hafley sort of framed it up as like an indictment of college football that he was leaving, but I think it was partially an indictment of the fact that they were lucky to be 7-6 last year, and he was very much poised to lose games this year and get fired. I think at jobs like BC, changing out your coach every few years to regenerate some excitement and just see if something different works is not a bad idea. And I think they should be better than they were last year. I don't know if they will win more games. They won 7. But last year, they were within 1 score of losing to Holy Cross, Army, and UConn, and they did, in fact, lose to NIU in their opener. Also, to be fair, they played Florida State very hard in Tallahassee, so it doesn't just go one way. But I could see this being a case where they are a better football team that wins fewer games, like a solid all-around offense in particular that goes 5-7 or 6-6. They have a lot back from the offense. They've developed offensive linemen for a long time, actually, pretty well. I think the Falcons took one in the first round many years ago. They had Christian Mahogany go from that line to the NFL this year. I'm I want to be careful because Boston College has almost like since they had that running back, like Andre Williams, like how many years ago was that? Like 8-9 years ago. They have not had a real dude on offense. Trayshawn Ward is here from Kansas State, and he's a really good player. And it's possible that Boston College could have like a that dude situation with him on offense this year. It's possible.
I think it was kind of a bad hire, and I also think that Bill O'Brien is vastly overrated in the college ranks. I don't quite understand how he got to this point. I think what's his best college?
Wait. Yes, you do. You absolutely do. What are you talking about? You remember?
I just realized I've done a lot of non-audio things today, but I'm smiling like a Cheshire cat full of shit right now as Richard says that.
You remember?
I can't figure it out. Like, what is it about Bill O'Brien?
You remember when Jalen Milroe, during the run-up to, I believe, the Natty this year, told everybody that Bill O'Brien thought he should change positions? Well, Boston College has a quarterback that I think might also fall in that category as well. If I gave Bill O'Brien some truth serum. Fun, but
he is fun. Castellanos.
Yeah. He is fun.
I just don't get it. I don't get the Bill O'Brien thing. And by the way, most of college football didn't get it either because man, was he shopped around while he was at Alabama. And man, were there a lot of people declining to hire him as a head coach.
I think I'm going to answer this question by saying that Fran Brown is the best case to have people still be happy in a few months. Yeah. But I think that's because that's the one where the recruiting seems like it's changing in maybe the more durable way.
Yes, like they are. Durable, I think, is a great word. They are doing something to shore up the long-term foundation. Right? It's Syracuse had the pop under Dino. And those players leave, and particularly in a transfer portal environment, you've got to shore up the foundations there because it's going to be a truism that guys are just going to leave. That is the nature.
It ain't warm. And there aren't a lot of 4.45s being run in that part of the country. And
no, but Alex, it's funny you say that because I think that you're not wrong, but that was such a fait accompli under Dino and other coaches at Cuse that, at least from what I've heard anecdotally, they are going to try and hit New Jersey, Eastern Pennsylvania, Long Island, the more populated parts of New York. And also, like, Syracuse isn't that far away from Northeast Ohio. They're going to try to change that a little bit. I'm not saying they won't go out and find like an excellent transfer portal guy from, doesn't matter where he's from, to be honest. Like, I think they're gonna not like, oh, we're the Northeast team or we're New York's team or any of that shit. But I do think they're gonna try and retrench a little bit and stop writing off that region completely, because any good Penn State assistant can tell you, like, there's good ball in North Jersey, there's good ball in pockets of New York. Like, you're right. Like, you're not gonna shake a tree and find a Dallas high school filled with wide receivers or whatever. Like, but I do think that the exciting thing about Fran Brown is that he's not going to take that entire part of the country as like a given that it's just fallow land.
I like that. I think that's a really reasonable, optimistic case for what they're going to try to do at Syracuse.
We'll see.
And
yeah.
Of course, it might not work. It's Syracuse. It's a hard gig.
Yeah, shit's still hard, by the way.
Ad nauseum. Yeah, absolutely, though. There are 3 new teams in this league this year. I think they come in with different expectations. A lot of SMU people seem to think that this could be an ACC contender right away, coming from the American. So Godfrey, let's cut it there. You tell me about that. Your thoughts on the positioning. I want to ask about the West Coast ACC schools. Jesus Christ, in a moment.
Please don't.
But the SMU, I mean, it's a school that historically, has pretty high ambitions for itself. We saw last year that the Big 12 new entrants almost uniformly had a hard reality when they learned what it's like to play in a power conference after being even in the best non-power. What do you see in the cards for SMU this year?
So I really struggle. Like I always think Alex is the best at preparing really authoritative previews. I will pull from preview guides. I'll pull from like local reporting. I'll try and look at advanced stats or whatever. And then I just kind of give up and I ask people who actually do the thing for a living. And this is the journey I went on with SMU. Skill position good, talent there, program promises there, makes sense. They kind of have that like affluent basketball school vibe anyway. Like, you kind of want to punch them in the face, annoying rich fan base, which by the way, I graduated from a punch them in the face university. So I know what to put and speak. Really like all of that stuff. And then I got into the prognostication, like the mag stuff and the online previews where they're like ACC contender, like Alex said. I was like, fuck it, that doesn't feel right at all. It came down to this. I called coaches. And they just said, "Is this weird? Is this just one of those dumb media things that we just get like a little bit in our echo chamber?" And I got kind of a yes and no answer, which is like they're going to be good for sure. I don't think they're going to be an above 500 team in a power conference for the first time since they were in the Southwest. Okay, so that's awesome. But I don't know how much. Like it just comes down to line play. That's what coaches talk about all the time when you talk about transitions in.
Yeah. An interesting thing for them though is that and I apologize for cutting through, but you brought it up. They've been a pretty good portal program the last few years, and they've done a lot of portaling down from the Power Five that's worked for them. Yes. And I think that could be helpful. Like they have a defensive end, Elijah Roberts, who was at Miami for 3 years, didn't really break through, went to SMU, he becomes a 10-sack guy. And like now you bring him back as a grad student to the ACC. And that's like the starkest illustration of it. But they have some experience playing at these levels, which makes me a little bit more optimistic about the adjustment period for them. So,
the scouting, the sort of unofficial scouting report I got here was that they are definitely more talented now than standard AAC roster. But they are somewhere in closer to middle in the ACC roster. In that regard,
the UCF thing.
Yeah, basically. And I'm not shitting on anything. I think like the other two schools being in the ACC. I mean, my God, we'll get there. But like this makes sense in a short term and long term mentality for SMU more than the ACC. I'm totally fine with it. I'm not trying to run the program down, but I do want to. Let's temper some of this hype here for sure, because when you go week to week, the physicality, again, it's just larger people moving faster on your roster than what you're accustomed to. I do also, in their defense, want to downplay one thing that's come up in the media, which is they were 0-3 against the Power Five. They were 0-3 against the Power Five. They were 0-3 because they opened against Oklahoma in Oklahoma. They played a rivalry game against TCU, and then I think they lost like BC or somebody in a shit bowl. Like bowls don't count. Okay. I don't buy into that. They're definitely going to beat some quote unquote Power Five teams this year. But on the week to week level, calling them a conference contender seems insane to me. That's all.
In this league, yes.
In this league this year, like, yeah, I look at Florida State, and I look at Clemson, and I look at Louisville. Like, no.
Richard, Stanford.
It's a bad team without a lot of talent that was really young and is now a year older. Have fun.
Yes. That dude is recruiting, though.
I'm not saying no, but you got to call a spade here. Like, I'm not putting lipstick on a pig.
I'm just shocked at the guy is I kind of thought this program would just slide into the abyss, and he's recruiting. He's doing good.
I mean, I think everyone liked the concept of hiring a successful regional FCS coach like Troy Taylor to go and do that job. Also, by the way,
Alex, I was kind of shocked they did, to be honest. I think he's a great coach, but I thought he would have worked at even Cal. I thought what does Sac State have to do with the Stanford blueprint? But dude, I was totally wrong. He is recruiting in a Stanford lane really well.
I have heard some rumblings that I feel comfortable enough to share on this program that Stanford is sort of trying to expand what you would call the Stanford lane of their
they've gotten
they have to.
They are figuring out ways to portal in. Now, and to his credit, this was David Shaw was trying like hell to do this at the end of his tenure. What ended up being the end of his tenure, Bernard Muir were having trouble doing this with Stanford administration. But yes, Stanford has consistently attempted in the last year and change to do that.
Yeah, it's not it's not the fanfic that you talk about. Like, oh, what if all the tech entrepreneurs were like, well, we want Stanford to win natties now. Here's $1 billion in stock for NIL. No. But I think they're more discreet about it, but trying to do something.
Yes, and that is an interesting story that might be worth looking at. I mean, it's we've all pitched stories to national outlets in this room, and Stanford just doesn't move the needle. But I do think there's so many unique and really interesting things that happen as a football program there. But yeah, like the fact that they are adapting while other Vanderbilt, other schools are not adapting to the new reality. Like, you know, unless you have military service as a requirement at your school, you should probably figure out if you want to adjust or move out of big time college football. So give the Cardinal credit at least for that.
Also joining the ACC, the Cal Golden Bears. Last year, I was a leader of the competent Cal movement. I took a look at a 10-18 team over the previous 3 seasons, and I said, looks like they're doing some things, maybe kind of good. I think Cal was maybe even a little bit ahead of Stanford in sort of expanding its portal and recruiting horizons, and did in fact see some of those benefits last year. They were competent. They got to a bowl at 6-6. They really should have beaten at least one of Auburn and USC to make that a 7-5, both at home.
Incredible sentence there.
Yeah, 2 deeply flawed, but more talented opponents that they had in their crosshairs and could have beaten. This year, I think I'm going to up the ante. Not just to competent Cal, but I think pretty good Cal this year. Jaden Ott, the running back, we talk about him every year now because this is his 3rd year there. He's a serious dude. Like this is a Javid Best, Marshawn Lynch type Cal running back. Certainly not comparing. He's more like Javid Best play style, but he's maybe a little bit between the two of them. He's very strong. He's very fast. Cal has another great running back. It's this guy. He's one of the best players in the ACC and an All-American type of guy for that team. Quarterback, very intriguing. They had a midseason change last year. Fernando Mendoza came in. He unseated Ben Finley. He's still here, Mendoza is, but so is Chandler Rogers, who, yes, it's a third school quarterback, but kind of in the way that I'm intrigued about in a good way, not the like, what are you still doing way. Started out at ULM, went to North Texas last year and was pretty good, and now is at Cal. So he's kind of gradually climbed the ladder as more and more evaluators have realized that he's really talented. He's a fun player to watch. You probably saw him on ESPN Plus last year, like putting up massive numbers in a couple of games for North Texas. Very fun player, good quarterback. From an entertainment perspective, I would love for him to win the job, though Mendoza played pretty well for Cal last year. And obviously Justin Wilcox's job is not to entertain podcasters. It was not a good defense last year. That is his specialty. They have some guys. Cade Uluave was the Pac-12's freshman defensive player of the year at linebacker. He is back. They have some guys who got pretty substantial sack totals last year, Xavier Carlton and David Reese Jr. Gettable schedule. They did take one on the chin. Jeremiah Hunter, their best receiver, went to Washington. So he was part of like the Washington cleanup crew that Jed Fish had to put together after losing all of those guys who played wide receiver for him last year. Competent plus Cal this year is where I'm going with that.
Okay.
Sure.
I'll entertain it. I love that.
It's an annual ritual for us to assess.
It's definitely an annual ritual that you get excited about Cal football.
Well, it's because I've been accused. You know, I shouldn't let it get to me, but there have been Cal fans before who have said that we don't pay attention to them on this program. And I feel like I'm an above average consumer of Cal football. I feel like I watch more Cal than the vast majority of non-Cal fans, certainly than most of the human population. So we're going to see what happens at Cal this year. Looking forward to it.
Voluntarily, too.
Arguably,
fellas,
more than anyone should.
It's superlatives time. Richard, you have already given us the minority coach of the week of the year in an interesting schematic spot. It's the preseason dude of the year, the guy that we pick who we individually think, wow, that's a serious dude. I begin with Ruben Bain, the Miami edge rusher. I think he's a future first-team All-American, a complete game wrecker, should be getting the kind of talk that Harold Perkins Jr. was getting last year at LSU. breakout already happened, sort of. I think he leads a very interesting Miami defensive front, though, Richard, you talked about how heavily portaled it is. There are good players here. Francisco Malgoa is with him, had 18 tackles for loss last year to lead the ACC. I think Miami's going to be unpleasant to deal with in the defensive front, and Ruben Bain is reason number one for that.
My honorable mention is Alex Mastromano, who is Florida State's punter, who is actually a really good punter, Ray Guy Award.
Love that.
And Ray Guy Award finalist, I believe, who is coming back. But I actually am taking Marion Hampton. Marion Hampton for UNC continues the weird trend that we don't really talk about a lot, which is like when UNC wants to, they like run the hell out of the ball. And actually quite well. They did this in that game against Wake that they both scored like 60 points a few years ago. And they ran for like 300 yards or whatever. Marion Hampton from UNC is a great, great college running back. And will be a lot of fun to watch for them this year.
I don't know if I've ever picked an O lineman. I was thinking about this. This is our first preview of preview season, and I was like, I'm going to pick an O lineman for this. I don't think I've ever have. It's pretty easy to do. Darius Washington at Florida State. Beast. Has played left tackle, right tackle, and center. Started at center in 2 games last year, I believe. Sunday player, lock it in, just absolute mauler. And that kind of versatility is always like the more I learn about like high level line play just from listening to coaches and stuff, the more impressed I am when you see a talent of that size and speed that it's swapping in and out. It's very, very impressive. So wanted to give the O lineman their due.
Lower key cool game of the year, as in when we do this exercise, we're not trying to pick like FSU against Clemson or whatever. Yeah, right. Everyone's going to watch that game. Great, cool. For me, it's Virginia Tech at Miami on a Friday night in week 5, September 27th.
Love it.
I think the winner in this old Big East showdown has a good chance to play for the conference title. I'm obviously a little bit more bullish on Tech than the two of you are. A little bummed it's in Miami, where there will not be probably the crowd that there would be if it were in Blacksburg. But
on a Friday night, dude.
On a Friday night, it's nice to get on a Friday night, though, at least for TV. I mean, it's not going to be great for the atmosphere. We've talked about how CFB has basically punted on Thursday nights. That is totally true. But Fridays have sort of emerged again a little bit, and I think that's one of the better Friday night games of the year.
Speaking of Friday,
who in Charlotte cooked this one up? Because I'll tell you this. Everybody knows what conference realignment hath wrought on the game, right? And I think conceptually, but when this game is played, it's going to be the time when you feel what conference realignment
I see it in
has
the notes.
Brought. Stanford at Syracuse on a Friday night. What is wrong with you people?
So Stanford students can watch it while they're starting to pregame for the evening from their dorms at about 4:00 local time on Friday.
It's
how is this cool?
It's gonna. No, I didn't say it was gonna be cool.
I didn't say it was cool.
It's gonna look weird.
But it says lower key cool game with. I struggle to find a cool one.
Yeah, it didn't really answer the prompt, Richard. But go ahead.
Didn't answer the prompt.
Richard was just like, "Hey, look at this piece of shit."
Admittedly, did not answer the prompt.
I'll just go fuck myself. That's fine.
It's just like,
jeez, yeah.
You're gonna see this happen, and it's just gonna be like, whoa, what? It's gonna look weird. It's gonna feel weird. It is weird. You're allowed to feel that way. Stanford Syracuse on Friday night. I believe it is Stanford's first conference game. I'm not entirely sure.
Okay, I tried to do the assignment, which was cool and slightly low key. Florida State at SMU.
I love this.
This will be the first conference game ever for the Southern Methodist Mustang rich people Highland Parks. So it will be at SMU. This is kind of the big one. This is the debut for their Power Lives. All the way going back to what post. Well, no, it was obviously like the decline of the Southwest. What I was trying to think. Yeah, like this may be the biggest home game since before the death penalty at SMU. It will also be the toughest game for FSU to that point in the season. I think it's week 5.
For FSU, it's going to be hard. Yeah.
Yeah. So they start with like Georgia Tech, Boston College, and then I don't have a schedule in front of me, but like this will be the most quality opponent they will have seen to date. And you'll have a very excited home crowd, and it's sort of a new and fun thing. So that's me being positive about realignment for a second.
Well, I love a game where one team is viscerally furious at an administrative level that they are in the same conference, let alone the same stadium as that opponent. And God, FSU's athletic director and such has to be, they might not even go to the game. They might watch this one on TV. I don't imagine Texas last year, how mad they had to be that they had to go play Houston in Houston on their way out of the Big 12. This is this year's version of this. FSU will be dripping with contempt that they have to play this game. And I find that appealing.
Is it as bad as, does FSU have to play at either Cal or Stanford this year?
I don't think so. Feels like Jim Phillips would not bite off that much.
Well, they will. Isn't that, I mean, Lord knows if Florida State's going to be in this league in 2025, but isn't that like a rotate, like everybody's going to have to do it kind of thing?
It will rotate.
I could paint this as a nice picture, Alex, because, Mike and the boys can get some exposure in the Texas recruiting market, some shit like that. Like, it's not that, you're just going to Dallas.
I'm not saying the players care or that Mike Norvell cares. Like, they probably have some guys probably have a few from Texas on that roster. I'm just saying,
nope.
There's a certain type of FSU
They have
person.
Cal at home. That's it.
Okay.
The week before, by the way,
you guys both know that I've developed a bit of a reputation for trying to fire coaches on this program. I leave an open-ended prompt to end the episode. The coach who's not going to be here next year, you got to pick one, either fire, retired, new job.
I actually think this is funny because even though what I said earlier in the pod about him sort of being in the walls, I actually sort of think it's Dave Clawson. And the reason why I think it's Dave Clawson is this. I think Dave Clawson is of the Chip Kelly, this is not what I signed up for vein. And I could see him just dipping to be an offensive coordinator. You know what I mean? And that's not, it's not informed by anything. I have not talked to Dave about it. It's none of that. I'm just point and shoot guessing of like, who's the coach who's like going to fuck off? Dude, and it could very well be Dave Clawson. Who knows?
I come at this question the exact same way. And it's just pin the tail on it here. Like, this is early season speculation. Godfrey has some reporting, but this is speculative. Justin Wilcox didn't sign up for this. He didn't sign up to be playing in a conference with Duke. He's a West Coast guy. He would be a sought after defensive coordinator, I would have to imagine, if he ever wanted to go back to that.
Big time.
So anyway, that one was on my mind. I mean, Tony Elliott's probably the simplest if they go 3-9 again, but Wilcox might be my aggressive, bold shot answer. So let's go with that.
My answer is splitzoneduo.com. See you in 2 weeks.
That's the Big 12 preview.